Hello, my name's Kate Crane and welcome to my 6th art journaling DVD, Junk It Up. In this DVD I'm going to be completing the backgrounds I began in the previous DVD and eventually binding it into a completed junk journal. I'm going to begin with a painted background that's going to be my front cover. So let's get started. First of all, I'm going to continue working on this background that I prepared yesterday. This is going to make the front cover of my journal. I'm going to add an image and I'll show you in a little while how I created this image. And I just have to decide now which way up I want it to be. There's words in there, it doesn't matter if they're upside down. I'm actually thinking I prefer that there. So I'm going to work on it, I think, that way today. Now, things I'm going to use to complete the background first of all, I've got my portfolio oil pastels. Now, because of the oil content in these, I'm going to come on to those last because of the oil, I can't write anything else over the top of those. I've got my paint pens. These are great for adding just extra little touches. My white Signo Uniball gel pen. My Pitt pen for fine writing. And this is the Stabilo pen. This pencil will write really dark on most surfaces. So I'm going to use this pencil to highlight some of the doodles that I've already added. So I'm just looking at some of the detail that I've got here, and now I can doodle around these a little bit and just make a little bit more of them. I'm doing this in a really loose, scribbly style. I don't want it to look perfect. Where I stamped this little shape yesterday gives me something to doodle around and play about a bit with today. So again, I'm not adding any new colour, I'm just picking out colours that I've already got in the background. So same again around these areas that I stamped with my sponge stamp. I'm going to bring in a green now. Because I've got green in my background, I can still have some touches of green here. You'll see I'm not being particularly accurate because I don't want it to look too neat and precise. And the white gel pen just adds some nice highlights. And if you've got darker areas, for instance like here, you can just add some touches of white to it there. It just helps to lift things a bit. Now here comes the Stabilo pencil. And you can see that's going on much darker. Could also go around the edges of some of my circles here. So I'm really just playing now. I'm just looking and thinking, what could I add? Looking at what's already there and just playing a bit with it. Now when I add oil pastel, I generally go for, again, tone on tone. So where I've got these bluer areas, I'll bring in this one here. And where I've got the red areas, I'll bring in this one. It can be, again, kind of very scribbly with this. I'm just using again what I've already got and just adding to it. I'm going to use my white and pastel now to just highlight some of these areas here. And the reason why I'm going around the edge is it kind of frames things. So rather than the design looking like it's just run off the edge of the page, this adds a frame around the edge, and it's another layer. It's just a little bit more colour. It's just adding colour to the colour that's already there. You see that white there? It just lifts it a little bit. I'm just going to leave that there for a moment because I'm now going to move on to adding the images. I want to add a collage image to my front cover, but rather than buying in a collage image, as I have done in the past, and still do sometimes, I wanted to make my own. So what I've done, and it's a really good practice to get into, before you complete a journal page, get your background scanned in and printed out. So here you can see this bit has come from here. You can also play about a little bit with the saturation of colours. You can reduce certain parts of the page, you can enlarge them. I've got another bit here, has come from this section here before I've added those stamped figures on the top. So you can play about and scan it in and then just use certain parts of it on your background. This is the whole page here, but quite considerably reduced. Now this gives me something great to play with to make my collage images. So I've got various bits and pieces here that I've cut out already using my own backgrounds. Of course, one of the advantages of doing it this way is that it's all yours. You're just recycling your own work, your own backgrounds. Now what I've done here, I've made myself a very simple template for a body shape, and I've cut it out of one of my backgrounds. And this is a vintage photograph. This was given to me by a friend, which I've scanned in, and I've just made it slightly larger, and then I can cut it out. So I've got a head shape there. And then I've just used the leftover bits, and I'm just going to kind of piece it together, keeping the shapes all very simple. And this is how she's going to kind of come together in a moment. There's a few steps I need to do first of all. Other things that you might use when you're out and about, look out for interesting things you can photograph. This was a fantastic old door that I found. It had lots and lots of drawing pins in where villagers had put notices on the door, and it makes a great background, and I quite often use this when I'm putting together house images. I may even use it to give her some legs. It's just a nice textured background. Now the one thing that's going to really help this is to edge with something dark. I'm using here walnut stain or vintage photo or one of the darker distress inks, and you need to bring it around all of the edges. This helps to define it against your background that you're going to put it on, but also it takes away that white cut edge. It just smooths things out a little bit. So you need to do that around all edges, including around the face. Even though it seems a little bit dark, it still needs that edge taking off. You can bring it in a little bit more if you want to give it a darker edge. I'm going to add some of this rub-on from, it's a Tim Holtz set, it's the Apothecary set, and it includes some white rub-ons which work really well on a darker background. So I'm just going to place that in this darker corner here. Now you could also do this with something like white embossing powder and heat embosser design. and that's just added a little bit of detail into that corner. Now I want to give her a heart, of course. And I think I'll staple that on just with something a bit different, a little bit more detail, different detail. And usually I piece it together first with a bit of gel medium because it makes it easier to handle. You can move it around easier on the page as you try and add it to your page. And gel medium, you can move things around for a little while before it really starts to dry, and that just gives you a little bit of flexibility when you're putting things together. Now before I give her the hat, I think I'll stamp something on it. Again, it's about adding detail. I've got a number stamp here, several number and alphabet stamps on the market. I'm using this one from a set by Amy Tangerine. I'm just going to give her a number 1 on the hat. I'll give her some legs in a moment, but I can also add a little bit more detail with my white gel pen again. And just by adding a fine black line, it gives it a little bit of definition. Again, I'm not being too accurate. And maybe back on with a gel pen again, just to bring a bit of contrasting colour there. So she needs some legs, so I could give her some more coloured legs. Or I could cut strips from there. I think I'll stick with the coloured. Just take those white edges off. Now, of course, when you put things together like this, proportions don't have to be realistic. You can have free rein on how you put things together. Now, what I've also done, I've just prepared a couple of scalloped edges, and I literally cut those freehand with the scissors. And this is so that she's going to have something to stand on. So if we look back at the cover again, so that's my smaller version, and I felt it needed something a little bit bigger. My scalloped edges I could bring in, or maybe that way. This is when you have to just play with things and see how it looks. And I'm just slightly offsetting there from the centre, and that's all to do with the rule of thirds, which I've talked about before in previous DVDs. If something is slightly offset on the third line, it just sits a little bit better. I've loosely scribbled some circles on some more of my backing paper. This is so that I can add these and it ties the image to the background a little bit. It just brings it all together, and I've just highlighted that with some white again. So again, it's loose and scribbly. I've got all the images that I need now for my front cover, so I'm going to add them with some gel medium, a matte finish gel medium, because my paint finish is matte, so I don't want anything shiny on there. And I'm going to use a brush. Now, don't use your best brushes in your gel medium because they never really recover. Now, the first thing I'm going to add is my scalloped edge along the bottom. Because I also want to add some washi tape over this. Now, I've got some black and white washi tape there. I can just trim that excess off. Now I'm going to put plenty of gel medium on here. So this will completely seal it, especially when I add a bit on the top as well. And it gives a nice, really flat finish to my page. Especially on the front cover, I don't want any bits sticking up that could get caught and ripped off, because it will get quite a lot of handling. And just to make sure that this really stays in place, I can add a seal over the top as well. A bit more underneath. And this should give it a really good firm hold on the page. Now here's my scalloped edge for along the top. And again, you can seal that with another layer of gel medium. And here are the circles that I've cut out and added. You see how now this because these match here, it brings everything together. So they just need gel medium also. I'm going to finish this cover with a couple of extra things. I've got a bit more washi tape here. This is my new favourite washi tape, the bird on a wire. And I think I might just add a little bit of that in the corner here. I'm going to add a quote to the front page. Now, to add the quote, I'm using this set. This is by the Artistic Stamper. It's called Mini Words. And these are great for journaling. And what I tend to do with those is stamp them onto old text and also onto craft. Now, what I like about this is you can pick out the words that you like to make up your own quotes. So I've already selected some words in here. I've selected I create beautiful art. Now, it doesn't mean I always think I do, but it's kind of reminding myself that we all make beautiful art. Art is very personal. What we see as beautiful, everybody has a very different viewpoint on that. I've trimmed these words down now, and I'm going to bring them in here. I think I'll have the I in the centre of that spiral. Now, sometimes when it's smaller letters or smaller images, it's easier to put gel medium on the page and then add that tiny piece on top of the gel medium. I've just kind of followed the shape there of that circle there. So I create beautiful art. Now I want to add a little bit more doodling here. I'm going to use some Prismacolor pencils here. These are wax based and tend to give good colour even on a coloured background. I'm going to add a little bit more around this circle shape that I've created as well, so I'm back to my fine marker pen. And I think I will leave that one there for now. I know that when I finally bind this, that the binding is going to take up some of that edge anyway, so that bit will be taken over with some canvas. I'm going to leave that there for now. So that's going to be my front cover. Now I'm going to move on to two smaller pages, the first of my inside pages, and these two pages are going to sit side by side inside the journal. Looking at this one today with fresh eyes, I'm going to add a couple more bits to the background. That's the blue colour that I used on it here. This is turquoise blue, and I just want to add a tiny bit more blue in here, just with a palette knife. And I'm just going to print some blue on here. And then something else I'd like to do, this is the Cherry Pie Dilutions, and I'm just going to take it out of the bottle, so I would quite like some ink splats, and I'm going to then put this to one side to dry. So I don't want to block those off, because if I block those off, then they're going to disappear altogether. So I'm going to put that now to one side to dry. And this is one of the reasons why I like working on separate pages, 2 pages at once. I can put things to one side and work on the other. Now, this page here, I'm going to add this design here. This is by Alice Palace for Crafty Individuals, this puffin stamp with a speech bubble. And I'm going to stamp this onto one of my background papers again. And I've typed this on an old typewriter, Give Me a Break, and that's going to go in the speech bubble. Once I've stamped it, I'm going to layer it up and put that in the speech bubble. Now I think I'll use my backing here, one of my scanned backgrounds. So I'm stamping this in archival, give me a nice clean stamped image, and bring it in here, I think. And I'm going to cut him out and add him to my page. Now with my speech bubble, I want to layer that over my little quote there. So I'm going to cheat and just cut through the outside and remove that inner bit there. So I'm going to stick that down over my quote there. By the time that's stuck down, you'll never see that join. I can cut around the edge Then I've got my speech bubble ready to add. My images are ready now to add to the page, but before I add these, I'm going to just add a few touches to the background. So using similar pens and materials as before. Now I can get away with the red here because it's the very strong pink that I've got. Just add some little finishing dots around there. And oil pastel again, just framing the page. And I've selected the darker brown this time, just to tie in with what I've already got on the page. And bring a bit of brown here too. I can just add some touches of red inside the brown there. Now my puffin needs something to stand on, so I think I will add some washi tape. I like to layer these. Now what I could do as well is bring a little bit along this side. It just balances what I have here. Just trim off the excess there. And now my puffin has got something to stand on. And I can add my quote. So again, with a gel medium, just under and over, it just seals it and stops any edges coming up. I've just got to think where to put this quote. I'm going to put it there because it just fills in the gap between the other bits that I've added. So there we have it. Give me a break. I'm going to continue working on this page now that my ink splats have dried. Remember, this is going to sit alongside the puffin one in the journal. And I've got some birds cut out ready. This is from the Dilution set. It's called Birds on a Wire. I find this a really useful set because I like the very bold images that you get from here. Before I add those onto the page, I'm just going to have a play around again with some of this earlier stamping. So this is highlighting those sponge stamp marks. I'm going to introduce a bit of red. And I'll do the same here on these white stripes. Then I'm going to have a little play around with these circles a bit. I think I might use my Stabilo pencil. Just because it shows it really nice and dark. I might do some pink in there. This is a Sharpie paint pen. And I'm just really playing with what's already there. And same again with the oil pastel. Framing the page. And where I've got these stripes that I've already created, I'm just bringing extra colour in between those. I'm just highlighting those with a little bit of the white. Now if I just have a look at my images, I'll see where I might place them. This here has created something, look, for that one to stand on. And I think I'll bring a couple along that lower edge and keeping this area clear. This is where I'm going to write in here. But I might bring in some washi tape just as a bit more colour, another feature. So not particularly serving a purpose, just decorative. And a little bit more of the black and white. Right, gel medium again to stick these images down. Now, it doesn't matter if it comes off the end a little bit, so I can just trim that off afterwards. Now this is a golden yellow colour. Now I could add this to the page. Because this is a lighter shade, it tones in with the red, so I can kind of get away with adding an extra colour there. You just have to be careful about going on with too much extra colour, but I think I can get away with that there. I'm going to add some journaling now in this area that I've left clear in the middle. I'm going to do my journaling with this very well used dip pen. I'm going to use some calligraphy ink. It's very dense black ink and it will write over pretty much anything, which is one of the reasons why I like it. But I also like the unpredictability of writing with a dip pen. It does things that you don't always expect. You don't have as much control. Sometimes you just have to be brave. Be bold, be brave and strong. Now I'm going to work on some more layers on one of my painted backgrounds. You need to dig out your jelly prints for this page. We're going to start collaging and building up lots of layers in the background. I'm going to build up a lot more layers now on this background. This is now completely dry and it's going to let me add a lot more layers to it. This is just the very first basic layers. This is the page that I started with collaged papers and print underneath, and you can see some of that shining through. Bits that I'm going to use to build up more layers, I'm going to use some of the jelly prints on deli paper, on Jelly Deli, and I keep all of my scraps that I tear off from other projects, and at some point I'm going to add these to the page. It then needs a bit of work on, they need more paint adding to really embed those into the background. So I've got some of my jelly prints ready. Now I may also incorporate some of this. These are some Prima stamps and I've stamped them ready onto just some text, because these are also quite nice when cut out and added, and a little bit of paint added. So again, it's about building up layers. Now, I'm not adding any new colours, I'm just adding to the existing colours that were already here on the background, but it just needs quite a bit more depth. Remember, if you need to blend it in or tone it in a bit, go for the white, because it helps you to blend things in. It's good for covering up, it's good for fixing things. Now, every page I always think goes through that stage where you want to scrap it and start again. And usually if you work on something, you can get it right. So I didn't like the look of this page when I looked at it today, but it's going to get better as I work on it. Now then, I'm looking at the scraps of deli paper that I have. Torn edges generally work better. And once these have been glued down, I'll need to add some paint around the edges to really make it a part of the page, so it doesn't look as if it's just sat right on the top. You can add as much of this as you want on your background. The advantage of this is you can move it around and see how it looks before you stick it down. So I'm just going to use a bit of gel medium now. You can see that as you add that with the gel medium, it already starts to blend into the background more. And I like the way that you can add these little flashes of different colour. So that's going in with quite a strong blue there. Because this is, of course, translucent paper, it's allowing some of my background to show through from underneath as well. It's a great way of using up your jelly prints in your pages. I think it needs a little bit more here. And I'm just going to leave that to dry for a moment. So while that page was drying, I've just collected a few more bits that I want to stick down and add to the page. These are the Prima stamps that I stamped onto a book page. I'm going to add those somewhere. And bits of dress pattern. And I've picked out some bits that I like with the lines on. This one has actually got a little phrase on, lengthen or shorten here. And just one more bit of deli paper because I like the colours on there. And I'm just going to keep building those layers. Now, a page like this for me is all about the process. It's just enjoying the building up of layers, playing with colour, not being too worried about the outcome. Just allowing yourself to play a bit. And the more journaling I do, the less I worry about the outcome and how it looks at the end. About how much more enjoyable it is just to play and let things happen. See, I'm putting gel medium down first and then just over the top as well to seal things in. Things like the dress pattern are quite fragile. It's quite hard to put gel medium on there. That's why it's easier to put it on the page. And then seal it over the top. You will get a few little creases in there. That's good. It's just that adds to the texture. Start to just layer things up in this corner a bit more. Bring this one and slightly overlapping what I've just added. Now where I've added all these little bits here, it needs a little bit more paint bringing in around the edges and just overlapping on bits like this, just to kind of bring it all together. This looks very much at the moment that it's just sitting on top, so I want to just blend those in a bit. A little bit of stronger pink along here. This is just adding more layers, and really it's just playing, seeing what works. I think it might also help, you can bring some stamping over the edges as well. Now I'm going back to my bottle lid, my favourite, and I'll just add a few of those. And then of course it needs some black. It's got very colourful now, very layered. It needs some black to kind of bring it all down again. So I'm going on with my palette knife. As usual, I'm just going to start in the corner and bring it in a little bit. just going to lighten this area here because to me that's just standing out as a bit dark there now. I'm just going to bring in some yellow over that edge. Now I'm going to add some ink. I've been playing about a lot with ink, because as well as writing with it with the dip pen, you can also scribble with it, draw with it. I'm going to use the wrong end of my brush. And I've got ink on the end here, and I'm just going to add a bit of a scribble. It looks a bit alarming when you first do it, but once you've added all the extra bits on the page, it just becomes part of the background. Now I'm just going to let that layer dry for a while and just talk you through what I'm going to add on the top. I've got a little paper bag here that I'm going to add. I quite like interactive elements on a journal page. So I've got this little paper bag and some craft paper that I've cut into strips. And I'm going to number those and journal on them and add that. When this is dry, I'm going to add that to the page. So then this becomes the interactive element. You have to pull those out to read them. To do that, I'm going to use this letter and number set by Amy Tangerine and this mini letter set. This is a Hero Art set. And I'm going to use archival inks again for this. I'm using some coloured inks to tie in with the colours that I've got on the background. Now you'll see I never really measure where the stamps are going. I think near enough is good enough. So I'm stamping on here 6 things about me. Now it's quite easy to journal about yourself because you know yourself better than anybody knows you. So generally, I should have plenty to say. Now these are going quite wonky, but I quite like that look, so I'm not too worried about that. So there we are, that's the envelope. 6 things about me, and now I'm going to go back to these tags and I'm just going to number them 1 to 6. I'll switch back to my red ink for this. So now I have my tags numbered 1 to 6. They will go into the pocket, and eventually the pocket will be added onto the page. Now there's a couple of things I want to do still to finish off the page. Things are drying off now. I think I will add some similar doodling as before. And this is just about allowing yourself to play. So I'm using the shapes that I already have and I'm just adding a bit to that. I can bring in some oil pastel. I'm again going to stick to colours that are already there. It just intensifies the colour a little bit. Now, I think I have my pocket somewhere on this corner. I'm going to use some washi tape again to add that. I do like to layer these washi tapes, and you can of course cut them down to be a little bit narrower so that it will layer over quite nicely, and a bit there. Here's the bird on a wire. Washi tape again. And then what you can do, if you want to match the colour in a little bit so it doesn't look so white, you can blend a bit of oil pastel on there and just bring it in with the background. And then we'll just add one little bird there as well. And now I think I'm ready to journal on my tags. I'm going to write 6 things about me now. I'm going to use both sides of the tag. So I'm going to put the first statement here and then flip it over and just put a little bit extra on the back. And I'm trying to choose things to write about that people may not necessarily know about me, so not the obvious. Although I am mostly quiet and reserved, I can be shockingly outspoken. Sometimes this can get me into trouble. I find myself agreeing to do things and then panicking about them. This can lead to a state of high anxiety, self-inflicted. So as you're writing things about yourself, try and find the non-obvious things, things that people don't know. For instance, although I panic about things, nobody would know. I keep that really well hidden. So it's looking for the things that people don't really know about you. I am happy on my own and content when spending time alone. This does not mean I don't enjoy the company of others. I am completely and utterly an introvert. This does not mean I am shy. If someone upsets me, I can feel physically sick with hurt. But when I get over myself, I will come out fighting. My art style is changing and evolving and getting more messy. I like it. Now you might notice on a few of these tags I actually made errors. I never worry about that. I just scribble them out, carry on. That's part of the journaling, it's part of me. I'm going to complete the page now where I've collaged a jelly print onto a piece of sheet music as the backing. But it's always a good idea before you use your jelly prints, on this, especially on deli paper, before you start ripping them up, it's a good idea to scan them and use them as future backgrounds. Now when I scanned this one in, I scanned it with a piece of sheet music. I didn't even glue it down. Look, I've still got my original, and I just placed it in the scanner together. So now I have my original to use. I have this one, and then when you reduce it, you get this one to use as well. So from one print you get several things that you can do. So it's always a good idea to do that before you start to work with your deli prints on other projects. Now here's one that I've got glued down ready to use from some of the papers that I've already prepared, and I've glued it down onto the sheet music. When you trim off the excess around the outside, it's always a good idea to keep those bits, because on my page this is quite a dense background, so I want to break it up with some other bits on top. I'm going to use some tags, and just to tie those tags in with the background, all I've done is use some of these bits off the side and added them on here, and it just ties it all together. Now, first of all, on here I want to create a dribble with some liquid acrylic ink, and this will need a little time to dry. And because this is so fluid, you can actually draw with it and allow it to dribble. And that really needs to be left flat to dry, because if I block that off now, it's just going to take everything straight back off. I'll just have a little play first of all. Now while that's drying, I've just got a sheet of text here, and I'm just going to hand draw some little house shapes, because I just want to break up that very dense background with something a little bit lighter. And this is very loose and very scribbly. I'm going to cut these out and add them. And because of this light text colour, it will just break up the background a little bit. I can either place these houses right on the bottom here, or I'll have to draw a little border for them to stand on. I don't want them to look like they're floating. So I'll have a look in a moment, see where I want to put them. I think I actually prefer them a little bit higher up. So once this ink dribble has dried, I'm going to draw a little border for them to stand on there. Now I'm just going to work on my tags. I'm going to stamp numbers on them. I'm just going to add these with a bit of tape. Now, normally if I was at home I would stitch these on, but I've cheated a bit and I've stitched them first so it will look like I've stitched them to the page. I'm going to add some wording to the page now. I'm going to use the wrong end of a paintbrush and dip in some calligraphy ink, or you could do this with Indian ink or Sumi ink. And in fact, you could do it with the end of a chopstick. I've seen people doing it that way. I just use a paintbrush because it's what I have to hand. And I'm writing on here, trust the mess, because that's what I'm learning to do in my art journals. I'm learning to go with my instincts. Doesn't matter if it's messy, it's all about the layers and the process. So this is quite a different way of writing. You sometimes have to go over it more than once. You have to work the ink. It makes quite a nice bold statement on the page doing it this way. Now just one thing to finish off, I just want to draw a border under my houses because at the moment they're floating. And the page is finished. Trust the mess. In the previous DVD I created some inky tags. Now I'm going to complete one of those tags with some images. Here are the 3 backgrounds that I've sprayed previously with dilutions. So there's the different techniques of direct spraying, spraying over gesso resist, and then this one that I decided to work on, which is creating the pools of ink on the background. And to that we've added extra stamping. I've put some gesso through as well. Now I'm going to add some images to this today, and I'm using mix and match from the Dilutions range because I've got lots of these stamps, so I can mix and match and play about with them. So I'm going to be adding some wings which I've taken from Ruby Rainbow. I'm going to add the body from Doolally Doris. I'm going to use some bunting along the top edge, and this is from Bags of Bunting. And I'm going to use this skeleton head here because that just fits nicely on that body, and this is Day of the Heads. And I'm going to add a quote from Say What You Mean. So all of these I'm going to add to this tag. Now I'm working on a small scale here on a tag, but something like this, if I show you a journal page that I've created previously, slightly different images, different body shape, but you can see that also can work on a much bigger scale as well. So you could do something like this directly into your journal. Now before I add those images, I'm just going to play a little bit with these gesso circles here. So this is just loose scribbles, and it just gives these circles a little bit of definition. You'll see that I'm going around each one several times. I don't want it to look neat. It all just becomes part of the background eventually. Now I want to add the bunting along this top edge, so I've got it already stamped and coloured in. I've coloured all of my images in with distress inks, just because I have them really. I don't have pro markers or Copics, but you could colour with whatever you have. Now I'm going to stamp it first onto the background, then cut out the flags and add those to the stamp. That way I'll pick up the connecting string in between on the stamp. I'm going to do it twice and overlap them a little bit. Now I'll have a look at where I'm going to put the rest of the images. Along the lower edge here, the dandelion clocks, I'm going to cover that with a piece of just scrap paper there. That gives my image something to stand on. I can just fit the head in there, and I've got some room here for a quote, and I'm going back to the bird stamp that I used previously. One of these often features on my pages, and I'm going to add a bird there as well. Now I'm going to add these with gel medium, but one thing you have to be careful of, because Dilutions react to water, they'll react to the water content of gel medium. So I'm going to put gel medium on the back of the image, but I'm not going to brush it over and around the edge, because that's going to make the inks react. So as long as I just keep the medium on the back of the images, then it will be fine. I'm going to trim the excess off at the end. Now as I put this body shape down, I just need to be careful not to stick it right down until I've got the wings underneath. So I'm just going to leave that bit sticking up there. That gives me time to put these underneath. Just adding the head on a little bit of an angle. Now again, I'm going to leave that just lifted a bit there because the bunting I want to go behind the head. That will just add a little bit of depth. Now I found this quote in an old dictionary. It says, "All human things are subject to decay," which kind of fits in with my skeleton image here. So I'm just going to add that directly to the head. So now I'm adding the bunting flags over where I've already got it stamped. And some of these will overlap and come off the edge. I'll trim the excess off afterwards. By allowing them to overlap like this gives some depth at the top. Now if I bring that head back down there, now the bunting is behind the head, and it looks now as if we've got two definite strips of bunting there. When these bits are dry here, I'll edge them with my fine marker, but I'll wait till everything's properly dry. I'm going to put the quote down here where I've got a space, and again, when the gel medium is dry, I will edge around these. I'm going to add some finishing touches with paint. I'm going to pick out colours, so because I've got quite a bit of pink, I'm going to add some touches of pink to the background. Now, acrylic paint will sit quite happily on top of the ink, so I can do that. So I'm just going to use an old card and a bottle lid again. You can see how the pink sits quite happily on top of that blue background. Now I can bring a bottle lid in over the edge of an image as well. It just kind of helps to bring everything together. And maybe a little bit more touches of black. So now to finish this off, I'm going to let things dry a little bit, but I'm going to edge around the quotes, trim the excess off here and here. Now what I did do previously actually is mount this on some mount board. Because I want to be able to handle this, take it in and out of a pocket on my journal, I wanted it to be quite sturdy, so I have already done that. So I'm just going to let this dry and then do the finishing touches. Now this is going to go in my journal inside the acetate pocket that I created ready. And here's a tag I created in a very similar way with different dilution stamps. Of course, once you have a pocket, you can have several things in there. Now that's ready to go into my journal. And finally, I'm going to complete the craft tag that I've added some very rough painted brush strokes to, and also a few other bits and pieces that you can add to your journal. Here's the tag that I created using paint, just a really quick way to do a journal page if you haven't got a lot of time, or a really good way to use up excess paint on your palette. And that was just painted on with very broad brush strokes and a bit of doodling. Now, just to finish this page off, here's a scalloped border that I've created from some of my own backgrounds scanned in. I'm going to place that along there. Now, I've stamped a bird cage from this Birds of a Feather set from the Artistic Stamper. And all I've done, I've stamped it onto more craft. And I'm going to add that along the border here. And this is a clothing tag. Now, clothing tags are really lovely sometimes. They're a really nice addition to your journal page. And I've also stamped the little bird from this same set onto craft, and I've added the bird here onto the tag. I'm going to leave this page ready for when I'm feeling like doing some journaling. But when I am, it's all ready to go, and I'm just going to add these with a little bit of gel medium. And this tag here I'm going to add with the stapler, because that will allow it to swing nice and free in the journal. So a couple of staples is enough to hold that in place. And there we are, that's the page ready for journaling on, and I'm feeling like journaling. Because I'm going to bind my journal together myself, it means I can include all sorts of extras along the way. I can bind anything in with it. So I've got a few bits and pieces here, things that I like to collect. This is an old a wages payslip envelope, and I've stamped this skeleton, and I'm just going to add, just to jazz it up a little bit, this makes a great pocket inside the journal because I can store extra tags and just little precious things, you know, if my kids write me little notes and things that I don't want to throw away. I am a hoarder. I like to think of myself as a memory keeper. I like to hang on to all those precious little things. And then this gives me a place to store everything. It's just all part of the journaling process. I'm going to add a little bit of washi again. So now that one's ready to add, just quick and simple. Now I've already stamped these two. This is another Alice Palace design for crafty individuals. So I've stamped these onto craft. I've cut them out, but I have just coloured them a little bit with some distress inks and just edged around them with a darker brown. And I've put a washi strip along the edge there, ready for these bunnies to sit on, because they need somewhere to sit so they're not floating. So there's just all the little interesting finishing touches, so that every page in my journal is different. So there's another one done, ready to bind in. Now there's a couple here that I've already done and got ready. This is underneath there, if you can see, that's one of my background papers again. And this is the Tim Holtz for Sizzix die. I think it's called a viewfinder. And I've just finished that off with a bit of tape along, a little bit of paper as tape along the top there. And here I'm still playing with my own scanned backgrounds to make a house. There's the same scanned photograph. And I've just edged with white gel pen. So that's another page ready to bind in. That would be nice journaled on in white. Clothing tags are a great addition to the journal. There's so many nice clothing tags now. I've got loads, of course. I have to keep them all. And I'm just going to jazz this one up a little bit. This is another Dilution skeleton. But because this is quite textured, I'm not going to attempt to glue that on there, because I think it will be quite tricky. I'm just going to staple them in place. There's another one at the top there. And then when I piece my journal together, somewhere that's going to get added. And a few more bits and pieces. These are house stamps from, I'll show you the set. There's a whole range of these, Home Sweet Home by Kat Fullman for the Artistic Stamper. And again, I've stamped these onto my scanned backgrounds, and I'm just going to attach them to the page and just maybe do a little bit of doodling along there. These are office supplies. A kind of excess to requirement hanging around so they get bound into the journal. The nice thing about these is they're lined and you've got journaling lines ready to go. I'm going to bring in some journaling, some doodling around these because they do look a little bit like they're floating. Now they're ready to go into the journal also. I like to add tags as well when I bind my journal together, especially tags together like this because it creates mini pages inside. And I'm going to add this little birdhouse here. Now I've already stamped and cut out that section of it, but to get the birds as well, I'm just going to stamp it first onto the tag. And now I can just add that bit over there. So I've got the detail, but I haven't had to try and cut those tiny birds out. I'm going to put the cover of the journal together now, so let me show you which bits I need for that. Here's the cover that I've painted on the corrugated card, and on the back I've just backed it with some scrapbook paper just to keep it looking neat. The back cover I'd already painted black, but again I've covered it with scrapbook paper to keep it looking neat. Now the cover measures 26 centimetres by about 19.5. In general, your covers just need to be slightly bigger than your largest internal page, just so that you don't have pages hanging out. And here I've got some sticky back canvas from Claudine Helmer's studio, and I've painted it black. Now to get these dots pink on here, I've had to first of all use my bottle lid. I've put them on in gesso, let the gesso dry, and then put the pink on top. Otherwise the pink just gets lost in the black and doesn't show. So I've done white gesso and added the pink. And how wide you have this piece depends on how many internal pages you're going to have. So mine is about 8 centimetres wide. Now I have two pieces of just mount board. I get these recycled off the local picture framer. And by trial and error, I discovered that so that the journal will open flat, it needs something in the middle. This stops the canvas sticking to the spiral binding. Just trim off the excess. Now I'm going to add the front cover, and I'm leaving a small gap here. This is to allow everything to move and fold with ease. And I'm going to do the same with the back cover. So I'm leaving a gap. And that makes the cover that's going to house the contents inside. I've put my pages together in order now. I'm using a 1-inch wire for the bind it all. If you don't have a binding machine, you could actually just use book rings, punch holes through with a crocodile and use a few book rings to hold it in place. It wouldn't be quite as sturdy, but you could do it. Now, usually when you bind with a bind it all, you have to be careful about where this joining seam is when it's a completed book. We don't need to worry about that because this is going to go inside and be hidden by the canvas. So we don't need to worry about hiding this seam. I just need to make sure that's well nipped together at the back, so we don't want to lose any pages along the way. So now that's all bound together, that's ready to go inside the cover. I've got my completed pages and I've also got plenty of blank pages that I can continue to work on. And now I'm going to put it together inside the cover. And what I've done, I've already put plenty of double-sided tape on here. And I need to line it up so that the edges of this front cover line up here. Now it's a good idea to have something fairly strong. This is the front cover here is what takes the whole weight of the book. So we need to make sure that you get something fairly strong for your front and also the back page. And I'm going to do the same with the back. And then you'll see how the two bits of mount board here help you to open your journal flat. So I've chosen a strong piece. This is a cereal box I've got at the back because this also takes all of the weight of the journal. And as you open the journal, the mount board meets in the middle and it allows you to open it completely flat, ready for you to work in on any future pages. Here is the completed junk journal. Let me just show you through because I've added a few extra little bits along the way. So on the front page here I've put a picture of, well, my feet wearing my new shoes, and I've added a few little quotes here that I've put on the typewriter. Little bits of washi tape just brightens it up a little bit. And I'll just flip through a few pages. I like the way that these two sit side by side. This of course will get covered up when I work on those pages as I go through. There's the interactive page, and I've added a little tag here that says junk. All of these empty sides I will come back and finish those off at a future date. Their page is just waiting to be done now. I've added a little clear pocket. Somebody gave me this. Once you mention that you're starting to junk journal, everybody starts to save bits for you and give you bits, and that's a nice pocket for putting extra tags in for journaling and so on. There's our tag inside the acetate pocket. And then this is what I mean about bending the tags over gives you miniature pages inside. There's the birdhouse one. Previously completed pages scanned in as new backgrounds. And here's the little artistic stamper houses. Again, it's nice to have overlapping pages. Pages like this are great for adding photos to, or perhaps a postcard that you want to save or something. It's a good place for storing things like that. There's the envelope as a pocket. And 2 tags that open side by side. This is the coated card ready for if I want to do some inky pages. That's the nice card that takes the inks really well. I decided to put my tag here inside an acetate pocket, and it's sealed in there now with stitching. There's the page that's using up the extra paint. A few tags in the wages packet there. And some junk that's got gesso on, ready for more journaling. And the final page that's stuck to the back. There we have the completed journal. Now at any point you can add extra pages, and I'm going to show you 1 or 2 ways that you can do this. If you come across a piece of card that you just can't resist journaling on, all I've done here is I've run this through the bind it all, and I've snipped into every one with the scissors. And because this is a good strong card, I can add it in here just by pushing them in, and that will hold it in, no problem. So that means if you come across a piece of card that you can't wait to paint on, you can add it at a later stage. And go to another empty place here. This is a piece of grunge. Now this is really flexible, really strong. So all I've done again is run it through the bind it all, snipped into each one here. That will fit in the same way, but before I do that I would either stitch or stick a page along there, and then that will hold it in place, and so on. And finally this is just a piece of folded card, which I folded, punched in the bind it all, snipped into each one. Now you could stick your journal entry in there and add it in the same way. So there's 3 ways of adding extra pages. So even though you've bound it and you've completed it, you can still add more pages, no problem. I hope you've had fun playing along. Don't forget, you don't have to do these pages in a junk journal. You could create these backgrounds in your regular journal. But junk journaling is fun and it's liberating. It's very liberating to be painting just on a piece of cardboard. You can add pages, you can take them out, you can let your journal grow with you. So recycle, have fun. Thanks for watching. Goodbye. So that's most of the things. No. In this DVD, I'm going to be creating a variety of mixed media backgrounds on a variety. No. Shit. Oh, it was going so well. In this DVD, I'm going to be creating a variety of mixed media backgrounds. Oh, I was going to say it again. I like to include lots of different size tags in my junk journals as it creates a lot of interest as you turn the pages and come across different size tags and so on. No. Hello, my name's Kate Crane and welcome to my 6th art journaling DVD. This one we're... No. In this DVD I'm going to be completing the pages that I began in the previous DVD. I'm going to begin with the painted background that I began and I'm going to... Welcome to my 6th art journaling DVD. Junk it up. No, sorry. Ah! In this DVD... So, dig out the rest of you... No, stop saying so. I'm going to do another page now. I'm going to complete... Keep it going. I'm going to build it up, add some more things to it, more embellishments. Ramble.